mock draft simulator. If you're live, first pick in the draft, we're not going to do anything crazy. We're going to go ahead and draft Caleb Williams to the Bears. I don't want to hear nothing about the Chicago keeping Justin Fields. It's just not going to happen. This is a predictive mock, right? This isn't something that I would do personally. Even if it was something I would do personally, I'm taking Caleb Williams, right? And for the second overall pick, we got Drake May going to the Washington Commanders. Again, nothing crazy. We're keeping the same old status quo. Now for
mixing it up here.
Right here, this is I know Drew went for the Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm not gonna go anything crazy here. I'm gonna go with Jaden Daniels.
You're a bum.
Yeah,
I'm so convinced that the Patriots aren't going to be picking here.
I don't think the Chargers will be picking where they're picking.
Ooh, okay.
I think they'll trade back. I think someone's going to want to get in front of New York to pick a quarterback. I think that's where I personally stand. But obviously, no trades, no funny business. We're going just straight what the order is, which just never happens.
Chalk.
Straight chalk, right? Are we doing anything crazy here? No, we're taking Marvin Harrison Jr. Because why would you ruin your entire draft stock by not taking Marvin Harrison Jr.? Okay. And for the fifth pick, you have to go solid, dude. You have to go Joe Alt. You can't take Brock Bowers with the fifth. If you trade back and you go closer to like the 8th, the 9th, the 10th, 11th, 12th, like if you go back further into the teens and then you take Brock Bowers, I'm cool with it. I'm okay with it. I'm solid.
Who's the most likely team to jump up in front of New York there? Minnesota?
Minnesota, you have the Falcons if they don't land anybody. The Raiders, I think, are a big.
Well, with the news today, too. Obviously the Broncos, right?
Yeah, that too. I just think that. So here's the thing: if Jaden Daniels is still on, if he doesn't get drafted by the Patriots right here, and he's still available, obviously they're not picking a quarterback, right? The Cardinals aren't picking a quarterback. If he doesn't get drafted here, I think the Raiders could jump up. They have a Jaden Daniels and Antonio Pierce connection. He coached them in Arizona, I believe it was. So you have that connection there, jumping up to fifth to go ahead and try to grab a franchise guy. But me personally, I don't think they're doing that. I think the Patriots are going to pick their franchise guy. You don't know how many times you're going to be able to get in this realm, in this region. As much as I'm not a fan of Jaden Daniels, at the end of the day, it's the reality of the situation. People believe in this guy. They believe in the tools. They believe in the running ability. They believe in the arm. They believe in it. I know I don't, but again, I think you got to take it.
I just feel like the Patriots should look at past the recent history here, and just because you're picking high doesn't mean that player deserves to be picked there. You can just take a 5th round pick and call the Cowboys and trade for Trey Lance if you really want a quarterback that was drafted way too high.
Yeah.
And I know everybody's mocking him there. It's so hard for me to reconcile the Patriots doing something like that without realizing like they're not the Patriots anymore. This is a different team. So
yep. On the clock, New York Giants, 6th pick. I am working under the assumption that you are protecting Daniel Jones. You go out and you grab a guy like Calvin Ridley. You beef up your pass protection. You can go ahead and slide him over at right tackle. You take Evan Neal, you slide him inside to guard, and you can pick up another good interior offensive lineman either later in the draft or in free agency. And I think you have a revamped offense that gives Daniel Jones the chance. And if he doesn't get the chance and he messes up, you can get out of that contract and go grab somebody else at a later point. And your building blocks are now there. I think Fashanu apparently is how you say it. I was just aware of it's Fashanu. I've been saying Fashanu, and I've heard everybody say Fashanu for so long. Apparently it's Fashanu. He's way too good of a prospect in my eyes. He's my OT1. He's OT2 going here in this draft. So I know there's talks of Troy Fontanu or Talisi Fuaga going up, but I think Olu's a little bit too good. And here at 7th overall, I'm going Malik Nabers. Malik Nabers to the Tennessee Titans. Yes, I know that they have a bad offensive line, but I think that you also need wide receiver help there. I think that's especially what's been stated very recently is not only do you bring in the guy who's coaching the Titans now, Callahan, his dad is now the offensive line coach, is one of the better offensive line coaches in the league, and he can make do with doo-doo, essentially. And I think that kind of pushes up the Malik Neighbors conversation to 7th to the Tennessee Titans a little bit harder. So I think that's something that they need and somewhere that they need to look, especially.
I think
And
this
we're not
is
gonna-
actually a great spot for them to be sitting, because if one of the top 2 tackles falls, if one of the top 2 wide receivers falls, Bowers is still sitting there. There's just so much they can do at this point. They're guaranteed a player that's going to make an impact for them at this pick. And it's
Absolutely.
not, you get to the Falcons here and everybody's talking about fit, and, there's a lot of weird things going, but that Tennessee Titans pick is really, really a good pick for them, because they can go a lot of good options and they're guaranteed a high level player any of the options they go to.
And the thing is people who trade up in front of them, it doesn't affect them.
It's
not. Fine. Right? It doesn't matter. So, yeah, they're sitting at probably one of the better spots in the draft where they could just wait and see what falls to them, and they're fine regardless. Atlanta Falcons, we're not straying away from the wide receivers. We're going to go ahead and go Rome Odunze.
That breaks my heart for Chicago.
To the Falcons, yep. So Chicago doesn't get their wide receiver 2. I think, again, we talked about it earlier, the Falcons really only have Drake London, who, as Drew has pointed out earlier, who's really unproven. Drafting another guy high like this, Rome Odunze, to a roster that, again, does not have a lot of wide receivers is something crucial to whoever's going to step into quarterback for them at that situation. So at 9th overall, I had to go back to my notes and make sure that I was picking the right guy.
Oof.
Cornerback 1 comes off of the board. Terrion Arnold. They just tagged Jalen Johnson. Yes, I know. Not big guarantees that you can bring him back. Obviously, you want to bring him back. But who do they have besides Jalen Johnson? The rest of their cornerback and their cornerback room is not very good. I think corner is one of their biggest issues for the Chicago Bears. A lot of it's covered up by their pass rush because their pass rush is so good. The corners need a little bit of help, and I think Terrion Arnold steps in and helps them out instantly. And I have 10th overall, Talisi Fuaga, going to the New York Jets. Offensive line help. Don't really need to see too much about it.
I thought the Jets had a good offensive line. Just kidding.
I was like, Cornu, why? Because they have Mekhi Becton, your favorite player.
We're gonna get Aaron Rodgers some help here at number 10. I don't care what happens in front of this. I think outside of like Marvin Harrison Jr. falling to 10, no matter what happens here, they got a stud at wide receiver. They got running back. I think they really need to invest a lot of capital in offensive line, draft wise and free agency wise.
So we have the top 10 picks now. Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Marvin Harrison Jr., Joe Alt, Olufashanu, Malik Neighbors. You have Rome Odunze, Terrion Arnold, and Talisi Fuaga. What do you think about the top 10? Any comments or any issues with anything so far?
Yeah, no, congratulations on having the most predictable and boring top 10 in the history of anything. I think if we took all the mock drafts, stuck them in a blender and spit them all out, what the most likely outcome was, I think you've nailed it. So the good thing is we know that the NFL never does that way, and your top 10 is guaranteed to be a pile of shit by the time the draft comes, because at least 3 of those teams won't be picking there. So
yeah. Now we have obviously Minnesota Vikings. Not going to change it from Drew's.
Do it.
JJ McCarthy.
Let's go! He's ready to play, suckers.
Oh man. And with
number
how
one
this
passing offense last year, apparently number 1 passing attempts. They'll do that again.
With how the board has fallen, I think that the Denver Broncos get screwed a little bit. I think they hope that JJ McCarthy falls. I don't really know if they have a lot of draft capital to move up. But I think that something that they need help on big time is that defensive line. Byron Murphy going to the Denver Broncos, I think he is going to go pretty high. I mean, there's even talks about him being the first defensive player off the board in general, over Dallas Turner, over Terrion Arnold, over Quinyon Mitchell, over a whole bunch of guys. I just got done watching Byron Murphy's tape, by the way, and talk about a penetrator. He's not a guy who's going to take up a whole lot of room or space like a T'Vondre Sweat, but he's gonna penetrate the line, and you're looking for pressures up the middle and collapsing the pocket. And I think that Byron Murphy gives you.
How much time would you say you spent watching another man penetrate on this Byron Murphy guy?
Quite a bit.
At least we know what you do in your spare time.
Yeah, how long is this? About 3 games. So 3 games is usually what I watch for guys' tapes.
This is the first mock I've seen where he goes this high. I kind of have him in my mind. I'm in love with him at the Texans pick, but probably if the fact that I'm in love with him there means that he's going to go higher than that. So that always seems to be what happens. I think the Broncos would love to go quarterback here, and that really sucks for them if JJ McCarthy gets snagged up. But again, we talked about this last week when I had the Broncos pick. And that was before they cut Russell Wilson. Obviously, it becomes a little more clear if they can go quarterback here, but they need a lot of help everywhere, and it's kind of like the Tennessee Titans. It's a good chance for them to get a quality player.
Yep. Yeah. Bingo. And with the Raiders, what do we know about the Raiders? They like guys who have high RAS scores. And no, I'm not going to take Xavier Worthy. I thought about it. A guy who had the highest athletic score, testing score in the cornerback draft is Quinyon Mitchell. He ranks number 1. I like Quinyon a lot. And I think he's a guy who, you look at him, he's big, strong, tall. He's very lengthy. I like Quinyon a lot to the Raiders, again, especially with that athletics testing score. I think it's somewhere that Las Vegas can definitely go.
I've seen that a lot. I am going to dabble a little bit on the gambling of the NFL draft, and I think there will be some money sprinkled on that guy going at that pick. So, yes, I agree.
14th. This is a super popular pick for any offensive tackle that's available, but I'm not going to go that way. I'm going to stop the slide of Dallas Turner going to the New Orleans Saints. You don't have any other edge rusher outside of I'm forgetting his name, Cam Jordan, who's aging and his play is starting to slip a little bit because of that age. I think you brought in an edge rusher a couple of years ago at the end of the draft, and it didn't work out. And honestly, dude, if you look at the Saints' early draft picks from the last couple of years, they've been pretty bad. I mean, you were talking about like Trevor Penning hasn't worked out, and that's a big reason why you're looking at tackle for this spot. Trevor Penning was never going to work out. I hated Trevor Penning coming out. He sucked. He was super raw, and his athletic ability was not that impressive. I just did not like him. There's athletic guys in this tackle group coming out that I really like that we're going to see. But I think Dallas Turner is a pick that has to go. Edge rusher help has to go for the New Orleans Saints.
Well, I think if you're the New Orleans Saints, you have a plan here to go tackle. But if a player like Dallas Turner falls into your lap, you just have to go at that point.
Yeah.
When a Jalen Carter slides so far, it doesn't matter what your game plan was for your pick at that point. You just have to take the player.
Yep, I think that's what it is. And this is kind of the earliest I've taken him, but I feel kind of comfortable with it. And I'm going to go ahead and go with Cooper DeJean to the Indy Colts. This is under the assumption that Kenny Moore is not being re-signed. If you don't want to bring him back and you want to bring in a guy like Cooper DeJean who can play the slot, he can play outside, he can play safety, he can play what you want him to play him. But guess what? He can only play one position. So pick and choose on where he's going to play. We're going to see Cooper DeJean, in my opinion, play probably at all 3 of those spots in the first 3 years of his career, very, very, very early, at long periods of time, not just in sporadic plays. I think this is a good gadget guy you can kind of put all over the field who's high in athleticism and high in skill too. Now, going to the Seattle Seahawks, I think you need offensive line help, but I think you specifically need a guy who I think is more of a guard than a tackle. J.C. Latham, you can play him at guard and you can do the whole, you play him at tackle, you could do the tackle and fail thing. I'm totally okay with that. I would much prefer a guy get played at tackle and then fail and go play at guard the next year. But I do think J.C. Latham is more of a guard in my opinion. I think we're going to see him year 2 start playing guard a little bit more. And that's a team that has a pretty bad offensive line and needs that help. And I think he fills that role pretty well. 7th. JPJ, Jackson Powers Johnson, going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Again, Luke Fortner is not a very good center. You're going to be looking to replace him. Jackson Powers-Johnson falls to the spot. I think you got to take him. And I think one of the more popular picks, Brock Bowers to the Cincinnati Bengals.
Ooh.
Yeah. So
that would be great for Joe Burrow.
Yeah. So I know that you need obviously offensive line help, and you can go with a myriad of guys. Troy Fautanu, Marius Mims, Graham Barton, Tyler Guyton. There's a lot of guys that you can go ahead and pick up at that position. But I think Brock Bowers, it's one of those things, just like Drew was just saying, that when a player falls to you at that spot, you throw out everything else and you draft him anyways. And it's a team you need. Guess what? The Cincinnati Bengals have 0. They have no tight ends on their roster currently. So,
and for anyone that isn't familiar with Brock Bowers has the potential to come into a team and be their number 2 pass catcher next year. And if they're going to move on from T. Higgins, they don't have a tight end on the roster. It actually is a very obvious fit for that team if he lasts that long.
Yeah. I think a place that the Rams are going to go is edge rusher. But I'm not going to go Jared Verse. I'm going to go Laiatu Latu. We've seen the Rams in the past not go with the high athleticism or really care about anything else but a technician, and that's what Laiatu Latu is he's a technician with his hands. He has a first, a second, and a third move. He has counter moves to your moves. I think this is a guy that's a really good fit for LA, and I think they're really going to like, especially with his medicals coming back cleared for the combine. A couple of guys for the combine worried about medicals. Michael Penix, Laiatu Latu, they came back cleared and good to go. So I think that's when you take them. And for the 20th pick, before we get your opinion, I'm going to go Nate Wiggins.
Okay. I was just about to say.
You're going corner help for the Pittsburgh Steelers, a guy on the other side of Joey Porter Jr. Long, lengthy. I think he has the best hips in the draft. I don't even think it's really close. He has some injury concerns. If he could stay healthy, then he could be really good. He's a little bit light. He ran a 4.29 at the combine, super speedy. I really like Nate Wiggins, and he's really young too. I think he's 20, right? He's something like 20. He just turned 21. So he just turned 21. Super young guy. You're going to have at 21 for his entire rookie season. So that's my teens. So just as a recap, J.J. McCarthy, Byron Murphy, Quinyon Mitchell, Dallas Turner, Cooper DeJean, J.C. Latham, Jackson Powers-Johnson, Brock Bowers, Laiatu Latu, and Nate Wiggins. What's your thought between picks 11 to 20? Obviously, we mix it up a little bit in this section here.
There's not really anybody there that I don't. Let me put it to you this way. I don't think there's anybody still available that is like a surefire. This guy should have been a top 20. You missed him. I think you and me haven't touched base on tackle rankings recently. I think Amarius Mims probably has a fit somewhere in the top 20 somewhere, but outside of that, I don't think there's anyone that you're missing right now. I don't think there's like, hey, Jacob, you're an idiot. This player's clearly going to be gone by pick 20.
Yeah. And this isn't my personal rankings either. Like if I'm taking a tackle at, 16, it's not J.C. Latham. It's Amarius Mims or Troy. Troy's really good too, but I think that the consensus is a little bit higher on J.C. So I took JC there. I think Troy Fontano can also go at that spot.
If you're gonna take that player at 16, like for instance, I'm okay with Seattle at 16. I really don't like the pick for the Jaguars at 17. If you're gonna take an offensive lineman in the top 16, I want a player that you can at least try out at tackle. Like we can put JC Latham at tackle, and if it doesn't work out, we know we got a surefire guard. I'm cool with that pick. To take a player that's a surefire inside, interior offensive lineman that high is kind of, but people love Jackson Powers, so I guess it's just one of those things.
Yeah, no, I got you there, and we're not going to stray away from the offensive line here at the Miami Dolphins at pick 21. Just talked about him. Troy Fountain, another guy who has multiple position flexibility, plays tackle, plays guard. He can play whatever you need him to play, and he's going to be there. So I really like him, and I think he's going to be a big time player for the Dolphins that are going to be losing Robert Hunt, and they're going to be losing Connor Williams. You can't bring those guys back most likely because you don't really have the money. You're negative forever $1 million in the cap space. So you're kind of tied up there, and you're going to need to draft an offensive lineman, especially when you're losing 2 of your starters. Philadelphia Eagles, I like them too much to put them anywhere else, and I don't care how low they rank them. Kool-Aid McKinstry, probably best press man corner in this draft. And guess what? The Eagles play a ton of press man. I think the only other team that plays a lot of press man as much as they do is the Cowboys, where we play almost exclusively press man, except in the playoffs where we decide to play zone and then we suck. So I think that's probably an issue. So yeah, Kool-Aid McKinstry to the Eagles, I think it's just a fit.
I think the Eagles would love for one of the top tier corners to fall to them here. I think they would be
absolutely
ecstatic with that.
Yep. And then I'm going to stop the slide here. I can't let Jared Verse fall any further than that. So Jared Verse to the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans should be doing backflips if Jared Verse actually falls to them, to this pick at 23. He's a really good player, a lot of use with his hands. He's a powerful player, gets really deep into your chest. Again, the Texans should jump for joy if they get a defensive player like that.
Well, I told you I wanted them to take Brian Murphy, but if Jared Verse falls to them there, they'll be ecstatic.
Just as ecstatic, yeah. For sure. Amarius Mims is one of my favorite players in the draft. So obviously, when you have one of your favorite players in your draft and you have your favorite team coming up, you have to go ahead and take him. Tyron Smith not coming back most likely. You have Terrence Steele that you paid, and he plays like an absolute trash can. Literally one of the worst ranked tackles in the league. You go with a guy who's an athletic freak. I really like this tape. It's not just the athleticism. The tape of Amarius Mims is impressive. If you say, well, he's just an athletic guy. Well, he's not Tyler Guyton. Tyler Guyton has a lot of athleticism, but Amarius Mims is more athletic, and he has better tape. That's why I said with Amarius Mims. And pick 25, this is usually where like the popular pick of Cooper DeJean comes in. He usually falls to this spot. Obviously, he's not there. I think you take Johnny Newton, Jerzon Newton here. Interior defensive line help for the Packers is something that's going to be a need. Yes, you have Kenny Clark, obviously. You picked Devontae Wyatt a couple of years ago, and he hasn't panned out to be the player that you really wanted him to be. Kenny Clark is really the guy who can take up a lot of space, and you want a guy who's a penetrator. Devontae Wyatt was supposed to be that guy. I really liked him coming out of Georgia. Hasn't panned out. Hopefully Johnny Newton does.
This is a very, very popular pick. Green Bay, a lot of corners here is what I've seen a lot. But the Newton pick is a great fit for what they're trying to do, because they just need to add talent to that defensive side of the ball, because their offense can score. So
absolutely. And man, Tampa Bay Bucks, you know what they need? They just tagged one, but I think they need another one. I am having a safety going in the first round. Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota, big-bodied safety. He's like your true single high guy, but he's so big-bodied you can play him in the box. He's a pretty good tackler as well. I really like Tyler Nubin. I think he's the number one safety pretty handily. The other guy that I think might be close to the number one guy for safety is Cam Kinchins. He could play wherever. I mean, dude had 1 million snaps in 1 million different places last year for Florida. So Miami, excuse me. I almost said Florida. I know all the Miami fans probably got a little upset there. So Tyler Nubin to the Bucks gives you a little bit of flexibility with Antoine Winfield. Again, maybe you're on a kind of a borrowing time currently with him being on the franchise tag. And I have Mr. Athleticism coming down. Tyler Guyton going to the Arizona Cardinals at pick 27. Need offensive line help. A guy who's a little bit raw. He's not ready currently right now, but guess what? Neither is your team, and you're ready to go ahead and take a developmental tackle here at this spot who has a lot of potential. I'm not letting any more wide receivers fall at this point. This has to be Brian Thomas to the Buffalo Bills. Speed guy, 6'4". He's like one of 3 guys over 6'3" to run like a 4.33 40-yard dash of all time. So, and it's not just speed. I think he runs a decent route tree. I think he needs to expand on it a little bit more. But when you're losing a speed guy and a deep threat like Gabe Davis, you replace him with Brian Thomas. I think you're getting a pretty damn good replacement.
Tough roll of the dice for the Detroit Lions to watch Brian Thomas go one pick in front of them.
Yeah, it for sure is. But if you're really looking for speed, which I am, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab Xavier Worthy here for the Detroit Lions.
Xavier Worthy and Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yep. So
I don't
again,
even think Jared Goff got enough arm strength for all that speed.
you were wanting Jameson Williams to be the speed guy on your team.
Spoiler
I don't think
he's not.
He hasn't worked out very well, right? So you come in and you bring Xavier Worthy in to be the speed guy, and it's not just speed. He has the routes to go along with it. I like him at this spot here.
I don't like the way this is breaking.
Now left we have another wide receiver going to be coming off the board right here to the Baltimore Ravens. And it's Keon Coleman. I'm taking Keon Coleman here. A big-bodied wide receiver. I think you have, I think you have your guy who can run the underneath. Obviously, Zay Flowers runs a lot of underneath routes. Yes, he can go deep, but a guy who's a contested catch guy. Rashad Bateman is not that guy. He can barely stay on the field as it is. If you want the best contested catch guy in this draft, Keon Coleman is your guy here. And now we're at the Niners. What do they need? They need offensive line help, right? That's even PFF says it, man. They just need, what do you need? O-line. That's it. It doesn't even specify. So a guy who has 5-position flexibility, Graham Barton coming from Duke, going to the Niners again, 5-position flexibility, I think is what the Niners need. And I think this is what they're going to grasp at with Graham Barton. He's another guy who's a little bit more developmental, played a lot of left tackle at Duke, but I think he can slide over and play all 5. He got snaps at all 5 at the Senior Bowl.
If the 49ers are sitting in this position the way that this broke, I'm going to be screaming at my TV. I'm going to be screaming at you live streaming about a certain guy from Penn State who is setting the world on fire right now. So,
and I have one more wide receiver. Wide receivers flying off the board to Kansas City Chiefs. One of my personal favorites out of the draft, A.D. Mitchell out of Texas. So both Texas wide receivers going in the first round.
For sure.
So just to recap that 21-32 for the people listening, we have Troy I always mess up his name. Fautanu, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Jared Verse, Amarius Mims, Jerzon Newton, Johnny Newton, Tyler Nubin, Tyler Guyton, Brian Thomas, Xavier Worthy, Keon Coleman, Graham Barton, and Kansas City Chiefs rounding it out at A.D. Mitchell. So that's my mock draft. Again, if you want to go ahead and check out Drew's mock draft, it is the mock draft 1.0. Go check it out on the channel. You are missing stuff. Don't say that you're not missing stuff. You're missing stuff if you don't go back to last week and go ahead and click on that mock draft. Give it a thumbs up just like this video here. We would appreciate that. All right. And that wraps it up for the pod. So
have you done a full 7-round mock draft for the Cowboys yet?
Mm-mm.
I did one the other day. It obviously wasn't very realistic. I somehow managed to draft Brendan Rice, Frank Gore Jr., and Christian McCaffrey's brother. So I was like, back to the drawing board.
All the legacy players.
It doesn't seem like this is the right way to do things.
Oh man, no, that'd be funny. Well,
they got to draft at least one.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm a little up in there on like what we need because like. We need stuff, obviously. We didn't go as far as we need to. It's like, what do we need? Do we need coaching? Can we draft a coach? Is that possible? So
how much time do you think it's going to take for the Dak extension?
Before next week.
Before next week's pod?
Mm-hmm. I think it's going to happen really soon. I think it's going to happen right before the start of free agency.
You think that they would want to lower his cap hit before free agency opens?
Yep. We already picked up Micah Parsons' 5th-year option, and we picked it up. And would we pick it up as a linebacker or an edge rusher? I don't remember. One of those two has a higher 5th-year option, and we picked up the lower one. So Micah basically like chose the lower one, so we can. It saved us like $3.6 million basically to 5th-year option as the lower priced player. So I think that Dak extension's coming really soon.
I don't think it matters, right? He's not going to play on his 5th-year extension.
Probably not.
So it doesn't really matter what you extend him at. I mean, maybe he will. I don't know. Maybe he really wants to go be a Commander.
Yeah, right. Well, Drew, anything to top off the podcast?
No, I mean, I since the Super Bowl, I haven't listened to one 49ers piece of podcast or anything, which is much of my weekly listening. I've been really focused in on the San Francisco Giants and the Sacramento Kings, and I decided to fire up a podcast. These two guys I've been listening to for a long time. Their names are Guy Haberman and John Middlecoff, and John Middlecoff is on the 3 and Out podcast with Colin Cowherd a lot. And it was their last podcast, and I didn't realize that, but I started listening, and they've both gotten really successful on their own things. So they've been together for 10 years, from Bay Area radio to the podcast, and they just held their last podcast. And this is a podcasting team that's made 7 figures doing what they do. It's what they do. It's what they make. And it just it was kind of upsetting that it was their last one, because it's gotten me through a lot of tough times in the last 6 or 7 years, being able to count on them every week. So hopefully somewhere out there we are making someone laugh or smile, or at least if I enrage you with a Justin Fields take, or I enrage you with a Raiders take, at least in that moment of rage where you're mad at me, you forget about something that's not great going on in your life at the time. So hopefully to our 3 viewers, we're at least making you smile, laugh, or cry in some order.
And Drew, beautifully put. We will see you guys next week. As always, we will be live reacting, live streaming, Twitch, YouTube, hopefully maybe even TikTok next time around. So appreciate everyone sticking around to the end. If you did, I will see you guys next week. Peace.